I need to show you this thing. I had planned to show this to you anyway, but it's exactly on what you just spoke about. So it's really good timing. And this is, the academic in me coming back out. Let me share this screen. So this is a Mural board, and what I've done is I started interviewing people, and I collected my thoughts around these interviews. The topic was around experimentation team structure, and I was curious about that spectrum that you just talked about of like how, is it centralized to democratized, that kind of thing. And so, there's in here you could see there's these interviews, a lot of booking, and we've got Heineken. I really love what happened over the past 3 or 4 years over at Hulu and Disney. Lucas over at Booking. I've got interviews, about 20 of them. There's American Express, Spotify, ING. We've got about 20 interviews right now. I started collecting the resources that people would mention. This is how I found you, Marty. Actually, it was Lucas Vermeer kind of put me on to your books and such. So, but what I started to do is pattern recognize, and I laid out that spectrum that you just described, centralized to center of excellence over to decentralized, which I also gave it this term. I learned this from Sid over at Disney, this autonomous and aligned pods, which might be the better version of the democratized kind of, or the decentralized side of the spectrum. But then what I started to realize is that the experimentation structure, there was a relationship with how an organization does things. And the labels that I gave it were product operating model versus a project management ops model. I don't know if this is quite the right language, but I noticed this pattern. I started putting the logos there. I got in trouble for putting a few logos. I had to take them away. And then I don't know if you saw this McKinsey article that came out in December on the product operating model. And they came out with this, a lot better, McKinsey level data on that kind of spoke to the correlation between how businesses work and the business outcomes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the article. I can send you the link. But I wanted to just put this in front of you. This is the kernel or a lot of the thrust of the conference that we're holding in October in Austin is going to be around this. In fact, like Lucas is talking from book, he's at Vista now. Sid from Hulu, and there's his colleague from Disney are going to speak as well. There are these teams, Melissa Wise from Eventbrite, who came from Booking originally and playing around with the product operating model. Luke Mortensen from Capital One doing the same thing, playing around with your model, Marty, coming to talk at that event. So how do you absorb this? I mean, do you see any red flags here? Any kind of like the way that I'm characterizing this is wrong, or how do you absorb this?
I don't think it's wrong. I think it's though missing the biggest dimension. There is a third dimension that what we started talking about that I don't see here. And I actually think that's the biggest impact of all. And that is, remember we were talking about the spectrum of whether it's a very just low risk, you're changing something from blue to green, or whether or not it's a whole new approach. So it's really how I would define an experiment, because I would argue that most of, and by the way, I got to work with Booking.com early on. They were great. Well, I wish more, but they kind of gravitated very heavily to optimization, very heavily. And they got part of a bigger company. They were acquired. It's not the same as early Booking.com.